We are live. Welcome to my video. This is going to be my first spoiler-free review, then spoiler-ridden thoughts on the 1999 Danish film Bleeder. So, is it completely random that I'm choosing to do this movie now, while America is being run into the ground by man-children with frail egos? It is clear from right away, this movie is an exploration of masculinity, of the expectations put on men. The moment that Leo, played to perfection by the immensely talented Kim Bodnia, opens his mouth, he says, whilst trying desperately to put on a happy face, to do a convincing smile of joy and excitement, but cannot muster one that does not betray his anxiety, he says, and I quote, "I think I'm going to be a father." It is important to note both that it's on his mind, and also he's not sure if it will happen. He doesn't know if he's ready for it, if he even wants it. We do learn not very long after that his girlfriend Louise has already had at least one abortion. She says she can't have another one. So Leo feels like the decision has been made for him, although obviously he could have just used protection or had sex in a way that doesn't lead to pregnancy. But it's very clear he feels like this wasn't really something he got to choose. The movie features a lot of casual misogyny, homophobia, and such. There are male characters in this movie who put down other male characters, often to their face, and a very frequent go-to is to use misogynistic language and, yeah, homophobic terms. Right, I just realized I completely forgot to mention a couple things. The movie's rated R, so will this video be. Glad I didn't start fucking swearing yet. And oh fuck, I just said it twice. Yeah. And this is a movie I absolutely love. This is up there for me with stuff like Flashing Headlights. Or is it just called Flashing Lights? I rarely mention that movie in English. We call it Blinkende Lygter, which does translate to... Yeah, you could go with either of, you know, headlights or just lights. Anyway, and, you know, Submarino, you know, yeah, these are among my favorite of the movies that my fellow Danes are responsible for. Anyway, yeah, several male characters do not treat women particularly well. The women, as a direct result, are insecure, second-guess, and struggle to set healthy boundaries with the men in their lives. The expectations they have of them are often not met, even when they're completely reasonable. I do want to briefly say, because I keep forgetting, for some reason I keep forgetting to note. I've been taking notes for this video for days now, keep forgetting to mention. There is this trait of this movie that I'm not sure I've seen the exact equivalent in any other movie. It's called Bleeder, and it is, you know, more metaphorical. It's, you know, I won't give away exactly. I'll just say, if there is violence in this movie, it's certainly not an awful lot. You know, just be aware of that if you hear the title and you think, oh, people are constantly going to be bleeding. It is more like emotional, you know, it's like inner bleeding, which is fine because that's where the blood's supposed to be. It's emotional pain, basically. But there are scenes in this movie where someone is clearly hurting emotionally, and when the scene ends, it will fade to blood red, as if we're seeing, like, the emotions bleed onto the camera lens. You know, it's wonderfully done. It's very effective. It draws enough attention to itself that you can't pretend like, oh, I guess someone hit the wrong button on the editing software or something, although I guess back then analog maybe. Anyway, yeah, it's definitely purposeful. It happens multiple times throughout the film, And yeah, I love when filmmakers are willing to actually use all the different tools at their disposal, because, like, a number of filmmakers seem to forget you can basically fade to any color. You know, your imagination is the only thing setting the boundary for that. And yeah, you know, so many filmmakers, they'll just fade to black. I've seen like a ridiculous number of movies that, you know, scenes will fade to black. Most of them, frankly, the fades to black at the end of scenes were just in the movie Boondock Saints for some reason. But yeah, really love to see it here. Yeah, it's not, you know, it's from 99. It doesn't have a huge budget, so don't expect like extravagant, but it does make good use of the tools available to it. And let's see, so yeah, in this film, not very long after Louis, the brother of Louise, yeah, I should definitely say, yeah, Louise is the one having Leo's baby. But yeah, not long after Louis, you know, let's see. Hold on. Yeah, yeah, not very long after, you know, Louis says, oh yeah, probably have a kid, you know. Essentially, like, he doesn't say the following, but I would argue it is, you know, heavily implied. That's what you do as a man, right? You know, you're kind of supposed to. I don't know. It just is. You know, he doesn't express whether he thinks that's good or bad, whether he thinks he'll be a good father. Just kind of, you know, not yet, but eventually, sure. You know, like, I don't know, not super hungry right now, but I guess we should order something to eat, because eventually. And, yeah, as soon as he talks to Leo after finding out that Louise is pregnant, he pointedly asks Leo, how are you handling this? You know, and then verbally castrates him, saying, you know, he wasn't sure Leo's balls even worked. You know, there is this very clear, you know, yeah, when he asks, how are you handling it, he's not saying, are you okay, this is a big responsibility. He's saying, are you gonna fuck this up, because that's my baby sister that you know, impregnated. You better fucking deliver. You know, it's, yeah, the movie is swimming in the expectations placed on young men and how bad a lot of young men are at handling them. In part because of other young men, because of patriarchy. It's not women's fault. Yeah, patriarchy places these unrealistic expectations on everyone, hurts everyone. Women more so than men, but also men. And I really appreciate this movie's ability to not, you know, to acknowledge these things without, like, blaming women. There's, you know, this came out, you know, so, yeah. 99, I forget if it was the exact same year, but this was around the time of American Beauty, and I still am not sure where I land on Fight Club, but certainly some people have, you know, made the case that that movie is misogynist. You know, it's one of those things, it's, a case could be made that it's satirizing misogyny, and, you know, certainly it's critical of consumerism, but anti-consumerism does not necessarily, you know, go against misogyny. So yeah. But yeah. Certainly, American Beauty, quite misogynistic, you know, and that one is also about the expectations placed on men, and that movie definitely thinks that it's women's fault, and women somehow benefit from men suffering, which is just completely ridiculous. It's again this thing of like, yeah, it's propaganda. Now, let's see. Yeah, when Louise suggests they move some of Leo's stuff to make room for the baby, he resists, even though he doesn't have a good argument against it. You know, he does say, well, what about your stuff? Why aren't we moving any of, you know, the things you have? And, you know, as he says that, we see, you know, the what he's referring to is like makeup and clothing. I mean, if she does not own those and use them right, there will be severe social consequences. Are you suggesting that she bumblebee around a party? Whereas his stuff, yeah, like, it is just stuff that makes him feel, you know, yeah, stuff that makes him feel good. Not really stuff he needs. The baby does need room, you know. The apartment is not one of those Hollywood apartments that's massive, you know. It's very realistic as this kind of, they don't have an absolutely absurd amount of money. I'm not sure they have 100 money. So yeah, is it like I'm not sure I would say we ever get that good of a look at what he has, but like some of it is like magazines. You know, it's not them moving that stuff is not gonna be the end of the world. Now, let's see. Right, and yeah, we also see from early on this is a world populated by people who have intense feelings but struggle to verbalize any deep thoughts they might have. And we see it's because the environment doesn't really respond very well to it. Fairly early on, Leo says, you know, it's kind of weird. He lives within walking distance from both a kindergarten and also a cemetery, you know, and that right away, you know, yeah, he is like teeter-tottering between, you know, bringing a kid into the world, raising it right, and thoughts of violence and death. You know, it is like, one can understand why the response to that is not exactly what he had hoped. That it's not like a positive response, but it is also disturbing that the other person doesn't like really make sure, are you okay? Like, why are you, or do you have these thoughts a lot? You know, yeah, it just kind of gets shut down. You know, there are, let's see. Yeah, I mean, he's trying to verbalize the thing of like the duality of life, starting and ending. You know, a lot of the conversations in the movie are very surface level, short, and you can tell that the people don't really agree so much as are just resigned to the reality that the other person might not really listen to them, maybe doesn't care. You know, this was an aspect that reminded me a lot of American Psycho. You know, these, yeah, just people who don't necessarily like each other, but they kind of have to be around each other. And yeah, you know, obviously very different environments, as you know, that one is more this kind of upper class, but I do appreciate that, you know, over these two movies we see it's not really something that only affects one. You know, that American Psycho is in part communicating to the audience, I would argue, being upper class and having all this, you know, supposedly these are men of culture, you know. Patrick Bateman's, you know, very early on, that we see his reflection in like this image from Les Miserables, or Les Mis, if you're enough of a theater kid, I guess. Which I am not, so I should probably not say it. Yeah, despite the supposed, them being men of culture, they don't have anything deep to say, Now, so the character Lenny works at a video store, and the video store is introduced with these glorious, I guess it is a series of pans, but it's kind of edited to make it look like it might be one, but I feel like it must be multiple. Yeah, panning across a bunch of different movies, and yeah, there's some slightly Tarantino details with the video store. It's not Tarantino in dialogue, but there's definitely a little bit of a vibe there, and it's not trying to be Tarantino. Now, yeah, I think ultimately I should probably save this next bit for the thoughts. I decided to not, yeah, because it's a little bit too much. I definitely want you to see that for yourself before you. So yeah, this is not as experimental as Nicholas Winding Refn would later get. It does not have the minimalism of Valhalla Rising, and I hear the Neon Demon gets pretty overt with its metaphor, which I think is, like, I haven't watched it yet, but I do quite appreciate an on-the-nose metaphor. But even back then, there is purpose and style to Nicholas' direction. Here in Denmark, we don't really... Even if you don't know someone personally, you might refer to them by their first name. I realize some, like, English and Americans would balk at that. But yeah, we are introduced to the major characters through these short clips of them just walking, and the music playing as they walk, their name appearing on screen, tells us a lot about their personality. And it's just this, it's not subtle, but it's a small thing, and it just works. And again, it calls just enough attention to itself that, like the very first character you see walking and you hear the music, you might not think much of it, but then it cuts to another character, the music changes dramatically, and it's like, oh, okay, I see where this is, what's going on here, and it just works, I appreciate some people might think it's clumsy or overly, yeah, some people don't like when certain traits of filmmaking draw attention to itself. I think that it works better for this movie than narration would. I love... there is no narration in this entire movie. If someone feels something, they say it in their eyes in these subtle ways and trying to hide it from other characters, and occasionally they will come out and say it verbally, but a lot of the time they don't do the latter, and it's to their detriment. And let's see, the movie also has a number of long takes, tracking shots, and the like, and these are the kinds of things that you don't do if you aren't really thinking about it, because they take a lot of planning. Good filmmaking is not easy, regardless of exactly how you're doing it. Fast cutting and shorter sequences and such are not easier, but a lot of the time they can take less planning. If you can cut from someone saying a line to the reaction shot rather than having a long take, if someone flubs a line partway through, it's not the end of the world. Might be the end of the take, but, with a long take, like some of this, like, holy crap, some of the just, yeah, there are a lot of words to remember, and then also making sure to act, and yeah, it makes the movie better. It is there for a reason each time. It is the movie is Danish social realism set in Copenhagen, a genre that I'm proud to say Danish directors excel at. I suppose the Copenhagen part of that is somewhat obvious, but yeah, we excel at, yeah, Danish directors excel at social realism. And yeah, including Nicholas. This was around the same time he made the Pusher trilogy. Pusher, of course, being what we Danes call dealers, or drug dealers. I do not know why we don't just call them dealers, because whenever I've said the word pusher to an American, they have not understood that it meant drug dealer. You know, to be clear, like, the word pusher, you know, it doesn't have another meaning in Danish. It's not like we just decided, okay, this Danish word should be called, you know. No, the word push, you know, yeah, it's the let's see, present tense of the verb push, you know, and yeah, like, you can understand, like, once you hear, oh, pusher means drug dealer, you would, oh, like, they push drugs on people, that makes sense, you know. But yeah, for some reason we've decided to do that, and that also, this movie's title, I'm slightly torn on it, because I do appreciate, as far as I can tell, this is the only thing called bleeder. You know, bleed is, again, an actual word, and, like, hypothetically you can say bleeder, but, like, it sounds slightly like Nicholas took the Danish word for hemophiliac and just translated it. And I don't know for sure, because that is the thing, like, sometimes Danish movies, they don't fully think through everything. An argument could be made that maybe it should be called hemophiliac. But yeah, I appreciate that, like, when, yeah, I don't think I've ever in my entire life heard anything else referred to as bleed, or unless someone, like, meant to say hemophiliac but forgot the word and just went with bleeder, because, again, you can understand what it means, you know. But yeah, the Danish word for bleeder is bløder, and you would assume translating that directly, because there are a number of words where if you take the Danish word, if you just translate it directly to English, you have the English word. You have the word that Americans and, you know, maybe English people would use. But yeah, let's see, I think that might be about what yeah, and it is also interesting, the movie's in Danish. You know, every word spoken by characters in the movie is Danish. You know, there's English lines, but it's because we overhear movies sometimes, and you know, borrowed words from English, whatever. But yeah, Nicholas titles his Danish movies with English words. You know, again, pusher, like, he could have given that a Danish title. You know, yeah, I do appreciate that. I think it is interesting that he chooses to, because I believe it is completely consistent. I think every Danish movie he's directed has an English title, which I guess means every movie he's made has an English title, because after these Danish movies, he started making movies in America and such. Now, but yeah, the camera work and editing put us right there with the characters and draws this very stark image of the environment, social and physical. And it does not change the camera work significantly for the scenes of tension and you know, yeah, and such, where Hollywood movies around the same time would often dip into more stylization to underline it, which makes the tension feel organic. It feels like this is a world that at any moment could become threatening, even violent. And this is the world that Leo and Louise are maybe bringing a child into. You know, one can understand some of Leo's anxiety. It's not all unfounded. Some of it is definitely because he's struggling to become an adult, something common to the characters in this and real people in the environment that the movie shows, and others. Young men today, in general, a lot struggle with becoming adults. Myself perhaps included. The men in the film talk very casually about sex, essentially treating it as if it's something men are entitled to. You know, there's a portion of this where it's basically treated as, you know, if a man spends a lot of time with a woman, he better have sex with her. Adult material is treated as, you know, not something you have to keep private, just something to consume, a product like beer. Which, you know, to be clear, I have no problem with porn. Not no, but I don't think porn is always wrong. You know, I view porn the way that I view work in general. You know, sex work is work. I don't want anyone exploited. I don't want someone doing something they end up regretting. You know, but yeah, in this, it's, you know, yeah, it's treated as something like at one point a character literally picks up a porno mag in like a what do y'all call those in English? Convenience store maybe, and just like starts flipping through it, like he's looking at articles in you know, a regular magazine, and that I do think, you know, ideally it's maybe a private matter, you know. And yeah, the movie has at least one character who expresses racist views to the face of ethnic minorities, and I do appreciate the movie makes it very clear it's the white members of the majority, the native-born Danes, who are the source of the problem rather than the ethnic minorities. And at least one person does feel bad about being friends with a racist, but doesn't really do anything except apologize to the ethnic minorities. And let's see, yeah, that I think I will also save for the spoiler section. So one thing I definitely do want to make sure to say, yeah, in the original script, Lenny was a much more comedic character that lived a more exciting life. When Mads Mikkelsen read this, he told Nicholas Winding Refn, Lenny can't be this cool because he is you, and you are not cool. Mikkelsen got his way. Lenny was rewritten as the more introverted, sensitive character you see in the final film. And I think that is exactly right. I think he is crucial to the movie for reasons I will go into in the spoiler, yeah. Right, and actually, okay, yeah, I'll get into that briefly, but, that is such a fucking Danish thing to, like, I like to think he looked him right in the eyes and said, Nicholas, you wrote and directed this movie, you gave me a part in it, you fucked up, okay, this character, bullshit, he's just like you, and you are the least fucking cool person on the planet. And as he said that, you know, anyone nearby who heard, like, nodded in agreement, and I was like, he fucking said it. There we go. Right. Kim Bodnia, who plays Leo, and Rikke Louise Andersen, who plays Louise, married later in real life, and Liv Korfiksen, who plays Leah, married director Nicholas Winding Refn later. So, yeah, it is genuinely cool when actors who play a couple in, yeah, I guess they're better in real life than their characters are here. And I do want to note, unfortunately, Kim Bodnia and Nicolas Winding Refn had a major falling out during the making of the film, which was widely publicized in Danish media. Bodnia claimed he had to enter a mental hospital to cope with the production after Wrap. Winding Refn and Bodnia are, as of 2022, still not on speaking terms. And yeah, some directors really gotta get better at how they treat the actors, and sometimes also crew. And one can understand, because Botnia does go through a lot in this and some other films as well. And it's really too bad, because they were really great together. Botnia is also fantastic in the first Pusher movie. Let's see, and I think that might just about cover... let's see... Right, and yeah, in preparation for his role as Lenny, actor Mads Mikkelsen sat alone and worked in a video rental shop for some weeks. I think that is the entire spoiler-free section. So yeah, absolutely amazing. If at all what I've described here sounds appealing, you know, obviously if you're not Danish, and most of my subscribers aren't, you know, it's gonna take subtitles and such, but I think it is well worth the effort. And right, I suppose I'll just briefly say, you know, sometimes when you watch a movie from another country, you need to know a lot about that country. Here you don't particularly. I don't know if Nicholas really thought about it while making it necessarily, but definitely, like, yeah, I don't think there's really anything you need to know that's, like, specific to Denmark. Yeah, I mean, I would almost say the only thing you need to know is the thing about, like, immigration, but I think it's self-explanatory when you see how, you know, a non-zero number of native-borns interact with ethnic minorities, immigrants. So yeah, you can absolutely watch this without knowing anything about my country. Hopefully it'll not tarnish your view of it too much. I swear we're not all like that. Yeah. Yeah. I rate this 8 deeply compelling explorations of masculinity out of 10. And that brings us to the spoiler section. So I'm just real quick gonna write down. There we go. So yeah, I'll start with the thing that I almost put in the review itself. One of the first things we see, you know, Lenny portrayed wonderfully by now international star Mads Mikkelsen. Seeing him in something like this today is a bit like how early Jason Statham roles were everyman characters in, you know, Guy Ritchie movies. Guy Ritchie was pretty successful. I guess he is still making movies. I hope he didn't, like, squander the money. Did Guy Ritchie end up rich guy? But yeah, we see, you know, Lenny's room covered in movie posters. You know, yeah, one of the first things we see is him asked by a client for something equivalent to The Hills Have Eyes. And, you know, I love Lenny launching into this monologue, impressively largely done in one take, where he lists all the genres and directors, explains how to find the different movies, and then at the end of it, the guy just asks, "Do you have porn?" Which is such a, yeah. Because, like, yeah, he watched The Hills Have... Okay, to be fair, I suppose it is possible that he wanted something like The Hills Have Eyes and also porn, and he was going to watch them at separate times. But I cannot help but note, you know, it's not like he came in with, like, I don't know, what's a movie that does not at all, you know, no matter what, you wouldn't end up getting horny off watching it, even though it's a really great movie. I don't know. I guess the Blues Brothers is not necessarily gonna get you in the mood, but sadly, some men do get off on The Hills Have Eyes. I'm not passing judgment on the movie itself. I haven't watched it, but I do hear that some people like it for the wrong reason. But yeah, you know, all that effort by Lenny, you know, it wasn't wasted by the film, but by Lenny, it was kind of wasted. It's just, oh, do you have porn though? Because, you know, yeah. I will say I am impressed by Lenny's self-control, because he mentions, oh, I mean, we have Hills Have Eyes too. I'm almost 100% certain that he doesn't follow that up with, and I appreciate, you know, it might like, get him fired or something, but he does not then say, because this is something I've heard about The Hills Have Eyes too, a good chunk of it is just footage from the first movie, which is like, it's still unreal to me that that's like legal. Like, just don't put out another movie if you don't have enough new footage. But yeah, and you know, oh, porn. Calls the boss over, you know, and yeah, we get the inimitable I'm sorry, I really don't want to mess this up. Zlatko Buric. You know, I love his performances, and literally everything I've seen him in. You know, and he by now is also internationally known. You know, yeah. Used to talk about him all the time. I don't know. I have not said his name out loud since 1864. The miniseries, not the year. Do I look old enough to be from 1864? Or are you saying, what, like I look like a fucking vampire? Okay, fair enough. But yeah, his monologue about all the different kinds of porn they have, with great gusto. Like, this guy gives Chet Pussy a run for his money. And this right after the brief tension where it seems like the guy might get kicked out of the place for asking if they have porn. Because, you know, like, there's a bunch of video stores that absolutely do not, you know. But yeah, you know, he walks up to the guy, and says, porn. Oh yeah, we got porn, you know. Just yeah, and yeah, God, I fucking hope that at least some of those porn genres are like exaggeration for comedic effect, because like we got a really dark sense of humor sometimes. We will make light of very serious subjects in ways that sometimes get us in really hot water, like uncomfortably, like, you know, the kind of hot water temperature that you put a lobster into, you know. But yeah, I don't think I want to actually say it out loud, but just fuck me. I hope at least some of those you would not be able to just walk into a store and get. I don't think porn like that should exist at all. And we also have the comedic bit of, at one point, Buric says, you know, hairy women, and the, oh fuck, right, I guess there are some English words spoken by, whatever. And the guy gets out a comb and starts combing his hair, as you do when discussing what porn you want to rent, and Buric has to say, no, not up here, down there. Just, yeah. Is he being called horny? In his own store. Get the fuck out. That one's just for the Danes. Nobody else is even gonna get, that's a, I'm referencing an ad. Danish ad. Anyway. Right, and one other thing that I almost put in the review, but I decided against. We see very clearly Louise is happy that she's going to have a baby. She thinks it's going to bring her and Leo closer together, and because of him, it's actually tearing them apart. Now, the dispute at the club, with the bouncer getting shot and then the shooter getting beaten, and it's seemingly resolved, by Louis' gun. Incredibly tense, and they do such a good job of gradually building. Like, we can tell from right away, these guys are trouble. The bouncer's like, oh fuck, not these guys. And I'm not 100% sure. I guess they are just generally troublemakers, but it does remind me of that thing about, that whole, I think it's true, it's possible, it's like made up to make a point, but there's a thing, I'll just say, it closes with, and suddenly you have a Nazi bar, But yeah, we don't know quite how bad, trouble these guys are. And we do see the gun drawn before it's fired, so we realize what's about to happen. And it is quite purposeful, the film, that it shows essentially vigilantism. Like, they beat the shooter rather than merely hold them at gunpoint until the police arrive. Like, I get pointing a gun at the, I don't approve of guns, and just briefly, we do not have anywhere near the kind of gun problem that America does, but yeah, there are some guns in certain criminal environments, we don't really have, like, mass shootings and such, and even, like, regular shootings, nowhere near as prevalent as America, but it is true that, yeah. I swear I'm not getting paid by, like, Danish Tourism Bureau or something. Anyway, the, fuck. Yeah, I don't approve, but I understand, holding a gun on the other guy until the door is closed. And even holding a gun on the shooter, but beating him, that's, yeah, they're no longer in danger. He doesn't have his gun anymore. He's being held at gunpoint. They choose revenge instead of justice. That's the kind of environment this is set in. And, I really appreciate, like, nobody really complains about, like, later Leo needs to talk about the fact that he saw someone shot. And the beating, but he doesn't really say that he thinks it was wrong necessarily to beat the guy, just, it made an impression on him. And it's such a great moment when you see Leo's reaction. Like, he clearly wishes that he had a gun. His masculinity is threatened. He doesn't dislike the violence. He wishes he was the one inflicting it. And yeah. He feels inferior to Louis throughout the movie. Lenny is truly abysmal at flirting with Leah. It does also provide a really strong contrast to Leo. Basically over the course of it, Leo's choosing to pursue brutality, trying to get a gun, putting bullets in it, shooting, and all this stuff, while Lenny chooses nonviolence. He's trying to build a life while Leo's destroying his with immaturity and lack of self-control. He doesn't appreciate what he has, and yeah, the thing with, yeah, Lenny, like, walks up to her as she's at the counter at work, which is just, don't approach women like that, just let them work, but yeah, and then afterwards he's like, oh, I'm actually going the same way, and then when, the conversation is kind of dying, he's like, oh, I'm going the other way. You're not being smooth, dude. Yeah, I'm so glad Mads Mikkelsen got his way, because it really is such a great, and it feels like a middle school flirting kind of thing. Just doesn't know how to, yeah. Like, he's just barely past the stage of thinking girls have cooties, and now he's trying to learn how to actually talk to one. But yeah, back to Leo. He sees movie violence and wants to inflict real-life equivalent. Now, this was back when the mainstream still believed the movie violence and video game violence encouraged real-life violence rather than provide a healthy outlet, catharsis. But we do also see, Leo trying to process the violence. And it is also very noteworthy, Lenny watches more violent movies than Leo does. As best I can tell, at least, he has at least a little bit more time for it, I think, and yeah, So actually, I guess it's possible the movie's making the other argument that if he did get more, if he were able to get more out of the movies, he wouldn't want the real life violence. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, Louis is hardened, repressing his emotions about it, and probably just so used to violence. Like, we rarely see him like really outwardly express a lot of emotion. It's, let's see, when he's shot at the end, and yeah, confronting Leo after when they hang him up. I think those are the only times where it really, like, majorly comes out. I think there is a very real chance, if Leo could process all of this in a healthy way, if you had someone he could talk to that could, that could help, things would have turned out better. And after a little while, Leo just can't stop talking during the movie, even when he has nothing to say, because no one hears him, and it is, and that's not just a man thing, though. Men who feel that way are more likely to lash out in more, like, harmful ways. But yeah, everybody wants to be heard. And yeah, when Leo does get a gun, he admits, Lenny asks, what do you have it for? And Leo's like, I don't know. He just wants one. Honestly, the flirting between Lenny and Leah is giving Rocky and Adrian. And then he friggin' stands her out. What a jerk. I really appreciate that she doesn't completely let him off the hook about that. Louise is so happy to meet another mother, or someone who is already a mother, and Leo just sees this upcoming burden of the baby that, he can't even be happy for his own girlfriend who's about to bring their baby into the world. I've watched this movie several times. I know for a fact that it doesn't end up happening, but I still cannot see him agree reluctantly to hold the other woman's baby and not fear that he's going to do something to either it or her other kid. The moment that he sees the other kid play, not quite with, but like on his magazines, And as soon as the other woman, who is willing to admit, though not verbally, out loud, how not safe Leo is coming across, is out of the apartment, he immediately hits Louise. And then he acts like him apologizing should just fix everything. He immediately stops her from hitting him back. Now, I'm not in favor of violence. I think violence should always be our last resort. I'm not saying it's never necessary. It was necessary to stop the Nazis in World War II. Hopefully we'll be able to stop the Nazis this time with no violence. But I think it is extremely hypocritical of him to immediately stop her from violence. Misogynists love to talk about how weak women are physically, but if one is, like, slapped by a woman, even if it doesn't actually physically hurt him, suddenly it's the end of the world. He cannot handle that. Now, let's see, which I appreciate is not about physical injury. It's because misogynists think women are lesser, and the idea of someone you think of as lesser, doing something that harms you, it can make you feel, weak. Now, let's see. And when Louis confronts Leo, he can't just come out and admit it. And he also really struggles to say it out loud later when he confronts her. Which also, I quite appreciated that she is like, well, what are we talking about here? Because he's acting like it's worse that she apparently told her brother that Leo hit her. Her brother didn't hit him. He threatened him, which, like, again, I don't approve, but it's understandable. Leo literally hit her because, like, she let a kid play in the apartment. Like, it's absurd. It's a completely just like, and again, if he could just fucking verbalize his emotions, if he just said, I really would appreciate if you don't invite people I haven't met yet into our apartment, you know. Like, the kid didn't, like, tear up the magazines or something. But, yeah, you know, and I really appreciate it. I love that choice, because there's so many movies where they would have been like, you know, is he really going to react like this if the kid isn't, like, destroying it? Yeah, a lot of young men have no impulse control. And if we don't talk about that, we're never going to be able to solve it. You know, I would definitely argue the movie doesn't come out and say, fuck young men, they're worthless. It says, there's a problem here, and we have to solve it. And it places some of the responsibility on us young men, because, again, Lenny does make the right choice. You know, not exclusively, but, you know, pursuing Leah, yeah, you know, whereas Leo, I mean, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, if he feels that strongly about it, you realize that you could, like, start with a conversation with her, if he was able to verbalize these things, and then, like, you know, I don't know, if it bothers him that much, maybe consider separation or something. You know, I forget what they said exactly, but there's definitely months before the baby is born. So, you know, maybe some time apart could make him actually appreciate her and the baby they're about to have. But yeah, you know, he just can't. And so it ends with violence instead. Now, let's see. Yeah, and you know, the yeah, Louis' confrontation with Leo was entirely Leo's fault. You know, he feels a need to assert his masculinity to Louis, pointing a gun in his face, and we can tell from Louis' reaction, this is not the first time he's been in danger of dying, of being killed, you know, and I do also think it's noteworthy that Leo escalates it like that, threatening with a gun. That obviously the three, you know, there's 4 people in that room, one of them has a gun, the other 3 are going to assume that gun is loaded, and he even mock executes Louis, when all Louis did was verbally threaten him. He didn't even hit him, and it was because Leo hit his sister. And I do also think it's very noteworthy, he specifically says not to hurt his kid's sister. He doesn't say women in general, much less people in general, regardless of gender. He clearly does not use violence except to protect people close to him, his sister, the bouncer. And I also definitely think it is not accidental. During the, you know, mock execution, that entire scene, there's violence being projected on the screen behind Leo. Like, they could have sat down to watch something that wasn't violent, or it could have happened during a scene without violence. Yeah, you know, again, this, you know, it's definitely commenting on, you know, media violence versus real life violence. I gotta say, watching the scene where Louise points out to Leo she's his life too, it's not just his stuff. Very typical, by the way. The guy just cares about material possessions while the woman is actually caring about people, including him. She says she loves him during that, you know, and yeah, all this just because she moved his stuff, and she even says, we can move it back. It's not that big a deal. It's not like she, like, threw it out. That still wouldn't justify it. Nothing justifies the way he behaved in that scene. But, like, literally, all that because she touched his stuff, you know, just, yeah, and yeah, watching that scene, there's such intense agony, and it's not just the fact that I stubbed my toe. Seriously though, Incredible scene. Every single time I watch it, I am practically screaming at the screen for Leo to stop hurting her. And then when he talks to Louis, he insists, oh, it was an accident. It was an accident that he kicked her twice directly in the stomach, knowing that she's pregnant, later learning she lost the baby. I really appreciate the matter-of-fact discussion about Leo's situation and future between Louis and the other guys, which is also, near the end, we get some very distinct music cues, not musical. If someone adapts this into a musical movie, I will watch it. I guarantee you, I will definitely watch it. But it's essentially, it sounds like a religious kind of, there's this choir, and just, it's like, God's punishment, basically. Let's see, but Louis and the other guys determining, okay, so who hits him? What do I hit him with? Oh, there's a bottle there. You got it. And making sure Louis is genuinely confident, wants Leo dead, and then getting the guy for the injection. Just they talk about it like they are deciding, so I don't know. I'm thinking takeout pizza, maybe. Just. This is not their first rodeo. They have done this or similar before, and it's just about working out the details. Nobody is like, well, I'm not. This is going too far. One of them's like, well, I can't hit him. I'm driving the car. As soon as you hit him, we gotta get him to the trunk. So just great dolly when we. Hello, Dolly, when we see Leo hanging. Also great that there's a shot before he leaves Louise's side where he's technically looking at her, and really the actual physical distance isn't that great, but the camera angle makes it look enormous. It's simple but effective. Inexpensive, but just placing the camera so far away from her. I think they might also have put like a different lens in to exaggerate the distance. But yeah, it's clear Leo genuinely doesn't feel like they're a part of each other's life anymore. He doesn't want them to be. And let's see. Right, and I do also appreciate the detail that it is 2 kicks. It's not one. Again, not an accident. He didn't slip and fall. He regretted it afterwards. Sure, he maybe felt conflicted about it during, but she still lost the baby, and it's still, even if she hadn't lost the baby, it's physical assault. It's horrifying, and I really do appreciate they're careful to make it clear it's not accidental. He might regret it. He appears to regret it, but he did do it. I don't like seeing violence against women on screen, but I do think this is a case where it is important that there's no doubt as to what happened. There are a number of movies where a male character commits an act of violence against a woman, and they're very careful to stage it in a way where it's like, oh, but I mean, he kind of pushed her and then she fell, and that, I mean, was it really his fault, kind of thing. And it just, I appreciate accidents happen, but we really do need to acknowledge there is a huge problem of men committing acts of violence against women, and just a disturbingly high number of times, a high percentage of it is domestic abuse, as we see here. It is a man losing control of himself and hurting the woman that he's with. And if we don't talk about this and solve it, women are going to keep living in fear, and they shouldn't have to. Now, let's see, I think... Right, so yeah, when Louise is talking to their mother, she offers, oh, do you want to talk to Louis? And he's like, and she's like, oh, he just left the apartment, which is wonderfully silly because, like, no, but you just said you want to hand the, you just offered to hand the phone over to him, like, just, yeah. And like, apparently the mother isn't like, yeah, right, because Louise isn't like, no, really, that's what happened. The mother's like, yeah, as usual. I like to imagine that the mother on the other end is also like, no, please don't. And yeah, later Louis has to answer the phone because it's like his phone, his work phone, something like that, and yeah, immediately tells her, Mom, I told you not to call me here. And no wonder he doesn't want to talk to her. The moment they get on the phone, she just wants to talk about, oh, your sister was kicked in the stomach. Seriously, though, really powerful scene, great acting. Literally, he just says okay and bye and hangs up, but his face speaks volumes. There's so much happening in his eyes. Just such a, yeah. Let's see. And yeah, I think the fact that he doesn't say, that's horrible, I'll deal with it, or, is she okay, or something. And I mean, we don't hear, we never do hear the mother's voice, which I will say I did think was a slightly awkward, because suddenly we are hearing the voice on the other end of the phone when Leo talks to Louise after and is told, she lost the baby. Anyway, but yeah, it's possible that their mother is saying, I want him fucking dead. Leo apologizing to all three of them after the mock execution is such a great distillation. I'm sorry. It is near impossible for me to find anything more Danish than, oh, hey, sorry that I threatened to shoot someone in front of you two, and I threatened to shoot, like, personally. We good? And the response being, and now we're all friends again. There's even a handshake and a hug. Like, I've never been in that exact situation. No one's ever pointed a gun at me, nor have I pointed a gun at anyone. Never even been near a gun, and I'm not saying that if I had been, someone would have been aimed at or shot. Oh, fuck. I guess, okay, years ago, let's see, my brother, I don't know if he still does, but back then would sometimes go hunting with a hunting rifle. Yeah, that was as close as and I never got close to, like, shooting it or having it aimed at me or anything like that. No one in my family would aim a gun at someone. But yeah, this thing of, like, doing something really wrong and then just being like, sorry, and then, like, the expectation being the other person just going like, oh yeah, sure, like, not having the serious conversation that you should have in that circumstance. Yeah, I'm sorry, that is so fucking Danish. I'm not saying we're, like, that it's exclusive to us, but that is extremely Danish. Yeah, Lenny does eventually admit to, yeah, at first he's like, oh yeah, it went fine, but then he does admit, yeah, stood her up. And again, we see someone trying to really open up and it not going well. Leo says, oh, early day tomorrow, which I really appreciate. We, the audience, don't actually know if he's lying or not. Like, it might not be the best time, but certainly it's a conversation that clearly Lenny does need to have. Like, probably, agree to meet at some point during the day, have that conversation. Just, yeah, I think there's a very real chance that Leo is just incapable of having that talk. When the other time they talked about Leah, he was like, you bang her yet? He can't have that conversation about emotional maturity. And let's see, I think that Yeah, after Leo is released, he calls Louise and says he loves her twice, can't bring himself to actually apologize, even when she says she lost the baby. And in response, she just tells him she loves him too. You know, because, like, at this point, she's just so used to, like, it would be extremely reasonable of her to say, is that really all you have to say? Is that all you can say? You know, he says that he loves her when all he knows is that she was kicked and she wasn't home when he got home. And then he says it again after she says she lost the baby. This is, you know, she's been looking forward to it. And, you know, it's been this big, like, it drove him, well, yeah, he ended up doing this really extreme thing, this spousal abuse, and he would definitely say that it's because of the baby. When he finds out she lost it, like, he feels bad, but yeah, all he can say is, I love you. And, you know, he loads the gun because here is a man who stood up from, yeah, and waits for Louis, you know, which I thought that was a quite good, because, like, yeah, he knows where Louis works, probably knows his work hours, you know, they've met several times for watching movies and such, so makes sense he knows what time he gets off work, and, you know, it's not like a secured area or something, and just, yeah, you know, let's see, yeah, shoots Louis in the stomach, which hurts like fucking hell, but it takes a long time to die. Say the goddamn words. And shoots himself in the hand, gets some of the blood on Louis, including into his mouth as revenge, and then shoots himself. Ends up going to that graveyard he says was within walking distance, rather than, you know, taking his kid to and from the kindergarten, which was equally close. Like, he made a choice. He kept choosing to pursue violence. You know, nobody put a gun into his hand, he asked for one. Nobody loaded it, he did that. You know, like, it's not like... I find it extremely difficult to believe that Louis would keep pursuing him. Like, he's going to let him slowly die. You know, they don't, like, spell it out, but I am almost 100% certain that the injection, you know, the guy is HIV positive, and as such, his blood carries, yeah, so, you know, he infects for 1,000 Danish crowns, he infects, you know, and I don't know if he even knows why Leo is there, but he just wants money. And I also, the detail that, you know, oh, it's gonna cost 1,000. I got like 700. I think I might have some. You know, just the little. That's also such a fucking Danish thing to put in a movie. Like, they're not. You know, there's some, like, American movies would be like 1,000. Here you go. Now go. You know, but just like, yeah, he doesn't have a fucking 1,000. What does he look like? Scrooge McDuck? Jesus Christ, you know, but yeah, just, but yeah, you know, that infects Leo with the virus, and Leo then infects Louis, you know, and yeah, shot in the gut. If an ambulance gets there fast enough, he will survive. It's just gonna hurt like hell. Let's see, you know, like, he could have chosen to shoot in the, you know, the torso, upper torso, I mean. And yeah, at the funeral, you know, Burish is, you know, pointing out, this is going to be good for you, this is important. Lenny just can't go in, and obviously it's because it's too sad for him, it's too emotional. But he doesn't have the vocabulary for that, so he says, I don't want to. Like, you know, if you change your mind about going to movie theaters, you know, he's canceling plans, that's all. He does go to the grave later, and honestly, it is true, funerals do hurt a lot. I've been to more than I would like, but yeah, It is important. I gotta say, Burish's character here just really reminds me of several Muslim immigrants to Denmark that I've met. Like, they genuinely do care about the emotional well-being of the people in their lives and are much more open about it than a lot of native-born Danes, Brits, Americans, etc. A lot of us white people just not real good at it. It's a culture thing. We're not born with it, but you know, socializing, yeah. Like I hate seeing Islamophobia because like they are such wonderful people. You just gotta actually meet them and, you know, yeah, treat them with decency. They're some of the nicest. Like, I have had people. I've had experiences with people where a Muslim behind the counter or driving a cab or something will take more of an interest. Like, I get, you know, oh, you know, customer's always right, I doesn't want an unhappy customer, but like compared to like white people in the exact same situation, you know, the Muslim will be much nicer. I've had people who claim to care about me, and to be clear, I'm not talking about any of my family, I'm not talking about anybody I worked with or people at places I was an intern or anything like that, but you know, yeah, people who claim to care about me, a lot of them in like school and shit, other shit also, yeah, like just be like, ah, you're fine, whatever. And then, you know, a Muslim will like meet me for just like a couple of minutes while he's driving a cab and I'm the passenger or something, and he'll be like, are you sure you're okay? You know, just like, I mean, if you need, you gotta take care of yourself, you know, just, yeah. Let's see. I remember actually there was one who, like, after he expressed, you know, concern, he was like, I think he like mentally was like, oh fuck, right, I'm talking to a white guy. It's just that I care. I'm just worried. You know, I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to be mean or something, because like, there's a lot of white people who think, oh, why are they being so mean? No, that's what caring looks like, because it's so fucking foreign to us, because we're so used to people just being like, ah, you're fine, and we're supposed to act like that's care, you know, and again, I'm like, most of the people who struggle with this, I'm not saying they are personally like terrible people or something, but we do gotta fight back against this socialization. I've been trying to fight back against it, you know, basically my whole life. Now, let's see, but yeah, you know, Borish's character, you know, he does try to make sure Lenny isn't upset, because he wasn't trying to make him, you know, when, you know, at work. Let's see. Right, and yeah, the thing about yeah, here we go. It's also genuinely sweet. He tries to get Lenny to start, you know, stop talking so much about movies. You know, pointing out, no, you should talk to your mom. The fact that you always talk movies and she doesn't want to talk movies doesn't mean you should stop talking to her. It means you should try to talk about something else. You know. Let's see, and. Yeah, and it is also true, you know, when he talks to Leia, it's like everything's movies, you know. Yeah, and Lenny goes to talk to Leia, who has a solid burn about, you know, well, how do I know if you're going to show up for the movie, you know? And so he says, oh, I'm just going to wait in the diner. I don't get off work for another 2 hours. No, that's fine. And I'm just sitting there thinking, are you going to take a seat, or are you going to stand there like a fucking weirdo for 2 goddamn hours just because you can't walk back? Oh, okay, 2 hours? I'll come back in, like, you know, when there's 10 minutes left or something. Like, you don't have to physically stand there. She's not gonna poof out of existence if you aren't there for the next 2 fucking hours. Jesus fucking Christ. I'd like to think that I would never, that I, in that situation, would be like, you know what, 2 hours, I'm gonna just go do something. You could watch a movie in that time. Like, what did he say? Watches 4 movies? Was it a day or a week or something? You know, just, yeah. And I did like, you know, she points out, oh, I get a lot of reading done, you know. Let's see, but yeah, yeah, and you know, once, you know, okay, so gonna wait until you get off work, and then we can watch a movie. I mean, when you went, did you watch a movie? And she's like, no, I didn't feel like it after being stood up. And I just want there to be an outtake where he goes, every time I come by, you haven't watched a movie since last time. You know what? We're through. It's so sad when Louise comes home, and you can tell she thought Leo would be there. She wanted him to be there. She was ready for them to have a conversation. And he, even if he had died, I don't know if he would ever have been ready for his side of that conversation. And yeah, she learns through the phone call, you know, he is dead. And let's see, which is also, again, you know, he doesn't even like write a note or something, you know, like he's decided he's going to go, you know, kill himself. And yeah, he just says, I love you twice. Let's see. And right, also earlier scenes, both when she asks Leo to come into the room and in a later scene when he asks her, at first they're like, does it have to be right now? Yeah, very, very Danish. And let's see. Not only a Danish thing, but in part a Danish thing. And yeah, you know, after Louis condemns Leo to death, watches the action taken that will kill him, he throws up, but then just walks away. It might, you know, it might be the first death he's responsible for, it's unclear, but he's not completely devastated long term. And right, really loved the use of Spotlight when Lenny agrees to try the drink. You know, earlier it was like, oh, water's fine, you know. And the thing about, you know, so do you like action movies? I don't know. Do you like yeah, action movies? Yeah, you? I don't know. Oh, I mean, we don't have to watch. No, we can watch. Yeah, very, yeah. And I do also appreciate it does make quite clear now, like, no, for sure, they do actually want to you know, spend time, you know, together around each other. You know, Rikke Louise Andersen, this is not the only time she acts, you know, with Kim Bodnia, including around this time. In Night Watch, he wasn't very nice to her in that movie either. But yeah, let's see. I think that pretty much covers. Yeah. Right, and the Lenny suggests they watch Armageddon. And yeah, fuck me, I know that movie was really fucking popular at the time, but Jesus Christ, yeah, I really, really can't stand that movie. I think, you know, I'm not 100% certain if Lindsay Ellis, you know, when she made the Nostalgia Chick video on the movie, if she liked it then. I have no idea if she likes it today. But if you watch her Nostalgia Chick, well, fuck, are they still up? She's taken them down and put them back up, or privated them and unprivated some multiple times. But yeah, in her video on Armageddon, she does a really good job talking about all the issues with that movie, and it seems like maybe she just thought, oh, these are kind of fun quirks, they make the movie fun. They kind of make me really despise the movie. I also think it might be a really shitty date movie, especially if she's not like super into action movies, Michael Bay, Ben Affleck, you know, Bruce Willis, one or more of those. So, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like there's better first date movies. Like maybe Rocky Horror Picture Show. Unless she doesn't like boxing movies.